Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host, Linnea Quigley, for Paranormal Truth. We will be having an in-depth discussion about reality and conspiracy theory. We will focus on Satanism or devil worship.
Hello, my name is Patrick Allen, and this is Linnea Quigley's Paranormal Truth, a series of films where we delve into the paranormal world of the unknown. In this episode, we are going to investigate the scary world of devil worship, also known as Satanism. Does the author of evil exist, or is he just a tool of control for the church? Can a person gain wealth and power by bowing to the Dark One? And is it worth the cost?
Back in the 80s and early 90s, a wave of troubling accusations swept across North America.
New and intense scrutiny on the activities of satanic cults.
Stories of devil worship and satanic cults corrupting young minds.
Unbelievable crime at the hands of satanic cults.
There were terrifying tales of secret satanic cults bent on tormenting and corrupting the young. Heavy metal music had hidden satanic messages.
Possibly satanic messages on some rock music recordings.
And games like Dungeons and Dragons were luring kids to devil worship. And it got even stranger.
Allegations of physical and sexual abuse of children at a babysitting service. The dark world of ritualistic child abuse.
There's a widely held opinion that what happened at the daycare was the devil's handiwork.
Underground networks of Satanists were infiltrating daycares and preschools to physically and sexually abuse children in occult rituals. Much of what fueled the panic was not real. These claims led to a wave of high-profile criminal trials in the US, Canada, and beyond. The cases often followed a similar pattern, some as young as 2 years old, in ways now known to produce false allegations. Children began to talk about animal sacrifices, blood rituals, secret tunnels, even cannibalism. Police would lay charges, prosecutors would take them to court, and the media would report uncritically on what seemed to be a growing threat.
Authorities searched frantically for evidence of an apparent ritual abuse epidemic across North America.
Some cases would fall apart at trial or during appeal. Others resulted in wrongful convictions. Many of the accused spent years in prison, while others faced financial ruin and damaged reputations. As it turns out, the satanic panic may have its origins in Canada. When asked about the spark that set off the hellfire, many experts point to this book, Michelle Remembers, published in 1980, written by Canadian psychiatrist Lawrence Pastor and his former patient, Michelle Smith. The book provided a template for the allegations of satanic ritual abuse that followed. Pastor claimed he helped Smith recover repressed memories from her early childhood of a terrifying initiation into a secret cabal of Satanists operating near Victoria, British Columbia.
They would put me in cages, they would sacrifice animals, they would have a lot of candles and chanting and bizarre things I had never seen.
Did people think this was a fantasy, that you'd made this all up? It was such hocus pocus that it couldn't possibly have happened?
Well, I was one of the first to stand up and start to recount these kinds of things and to bring it publicly.
There was no evidence or witnesses to Smith's account, yet Pastor presented the book as a true story.
The hard evidence is difficult to find because if a child is sacrificed, that child's body isn't going to be left. If it's an Orthodox satanic cult, they're going to burn the body and they're going to eat it during ceremony, so they'll leave no evidence around.
Michelle Remembers was also one of the first books to suggest that underground satanic networks were not only real, but were infiltrating communities in an organized effort. Anyone could be a Satanist, your next-door neighbor, your dentist, or your daycare provider. It was an idea that stuck with many readers.
The book is called Michelle Remembers.
The book became an overnight sensation, and Pastor and Smith received a lucrative publishing deal, about $1.2 million in today's dollars. It also established Pazder as a sought-after expert on the burgeoning phenomenon of ritual abuse, a term he coined himself. There was even talk of a movie deal with Dustin Hoffman playing Pazder. For the McMartin preschool trial in Manhattan Beach, California, where 7 daycare workers were accused of ritually abusing children, Pazder was flown down to be an expert consultant in satanic cults for the prosecution. In another ritual abuse case in Bakersfield, California, Michelle Remembers was used as training material by social workers who believed they had uncovered an extensive satanic pedophile ring. Specialists in satanic ideology were suddenly in high demand as more and more ritual abuse cases went to trial. In Austin, Texas, another self-styled satanic cult expert was used to secure the convictions of daycare owners Dan and Fran Keller, who spent decades in prison before being exonerated. It became increasingly common to see ritual crime training seminars led by psychologists, church groups, and even the police. This is former FBI agent Ken Lanning, who studied the spread of the panic in the 80s.
All these people network with each other, and they'd all get together and go to seminars and discussions, and they'd be told this is what Satanists do and this is how they do it. And so all that is planted through the use of these kinds of techniques, hypnosis and other ways, that cause the spread of this kind of stuff. So many people say, well, you can't identify these cases unless you've been trained to learn about them. And some of that training becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
The commercial success of Michelle Remembers inspired dozens of copycat memoirs, which further amplified the perception that satanic ritual abuse was widespread. But there was never any evidence of a satanic conspiracy. In 1994, a psychologist from the University of California researched over 12,000 accusations of ritual abuse, but found no substantiated reports of organized satanic groups who sexually abused children. In later years, as the panic died down, Pazder tried to distance himself from the claims he made in Michelle Remembers.
I'm not there to believe or not believe. I'm there to try and understand what they're trying to tell me of an experience, whether that has actually happened to them or that is their way of trying to express a profound pain that they've experienced.
But neither he nor Smith ever publicly renounced the book's allegations. This strange period of moral hysteria serves as a reminder of what can happen when we abandon the pursuit of facts for a more sensational fiction. The question is, have we learned our lesson?
Is there a well-organized plot, an insidious design right now to program and influence the minds of our children towards the occult and witchcraft?
I think that's an interesting thing.
This one piece will make 52 layers.
Watch on mobile devices or the big screen. All for free. No subscription required. Download Veely now.
Accusations that various groups have been practicing Satanism have been made throughout much of Christian history. During the Middle Ages, the Inquisition attached to the Catholic Church alleged that various heretical Christian sects and groups, such as the Knights Templar and the Cathars, performed secret satanic rituals. In the subsequent early modern period, belief in a widespread satanic conspiracy of witches resulted in mass trials of alleged witches across Europe and the North American colonies. Accusations that satanic conspiracies were active and behind such events as Protestantism, and conversely the Protestant claim that the Pope was the Antichrist, and the French Revolution, continued to be made in Christendom during the 18th to the 20th century. The idea of a vast satanic conspiracy reached new heights with the influential Taxil hoax of France in the 1890s, which claimed that Freemasonry worshipped Satan, Lucifer, and Baphomet in their rituals. In the 1980s and 90s, the satanic ritual abuse hysteria spread through the United States and the United Kingdom amid fears that groups of Satanists were regularly sexually abusing and murdering children in their rites. In most of these cases, there is no corroborating evidence that any of those accused of Satanism were actually practitioners of a satanic religion or guilty of the allegations leveled at them. Since the 19th century, various small religious groups have emerged that identify as Satanists or use satanic iconography. The Satanist groups that appeared after the 1960s are widely diverse, but two major trends are theistic Satanism and atheistic Satanism. Theistic Satanists venerate Satan as a supernatural deity, viewing him not as omnipotent, but rather as a patriarch. In contrast, atheistic Satanists regard Satan as merely a symbol of certain human traits. Contemporary religious Satanism is predominantly an American phenomenon. The idea is spreading elsewhere with the effects of globalization and the internet. The internet spreads awareness of other Satanists, and is also the main battleground for Satanist disputes. Satanism started to reach Central and Eastern Europe in the 1990s, in time with the fall of the Soviet Union, and most noticeably in Poland and Lithuania, predominantly Roman Catholic countries. Two of the biggest components of Satanism were Aleister Crowley, the granddaddy of them all, followed by Anton LaVey, who would later form the Church of Satan.
In case anyone's never heard of him, Aleister Crowley was an English poet. He was born in 1875 to a wealthy family who were members of the Plymouth Brethren, a particularly conservative Christian group. Crowley's upbringing was so religious and so strict that as a child his only reading material was the King James Bible. By the time he reached adolescence, however, Crowley had come to despise the religious and moral hypocrisy of his family and began rebelling against their fundamentalist values. Although Crowley went on to achieve some fame as a poet and mountaineer, he is mainly remembered today as the most infamous mystic, magician and occultist of the 20th century. And Crowley acquired his notoriety primarily because of his criticism of organized religion, his very open and libertarian stance on sexuality and drug use, and his tendency to write frankly and unapologetically about these topics. And he also considered himself a prophet, and at the beginning of the 20th century he founded a new religious movement called Thelema. Crowley claimed that in 1904 he received a religious revelation in the form of an inspired text known as the Book of the Law. The Book of the Law proclaims the beginning of a new religious paradigm for mankind and announces the law of Thelema. The principal tenets of Thelema are: every man and every woman is a star, do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law, love is the law, love under will, and there is no law beyond do what thou wilt. And Crowley interpreted the law of Thelema to mean that every individual is intrinsically divine, and as such, each individual has a divine right to pursue their own personal path through life. For Crowley, the point of life is for each person to discover and fulfill their unique purpose in the universe, which he called accomplishing their true will. He equated discovering your true will with activating your own personal genius and realizing your own divinity. For Crowley, transforming consciousness was the key to activating your own genius, particularly transforming consciousness such that you dissolve the boundary between the ego and the non-ego, which he equated with a mystical or religious experience. And these experiences are the goal of Crowley's system of practical occultism. The motto of his system is the method of science, the aim of religion. And this means marrying scientific experimental methodologies to religious practices in order to understand the physiological and psychological processes that produce mystical experiences and to reap the benefits of these experiences. So Crowley would have been extremely interested in the scientific research into the production of mystical experiences that many people here are actually currently researching. Crowley recommended two techniques to transform consciousness. The first is the Eastern discipline of yogic meditation, which he learned in Ceylon and India. And Crowley depicted yoga as an introverted method of transforming consciousness, in which the mind is contracted to a single point until normal consciousness is transcended. The second technique is Western ceremonial magic, or magic with a K as Crowley spelled it, which he learned while he was a member of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. The Golden Dawn was a magical secret society founded towards the end of the 19th century that instructed its members in the theory and practice of ceremonial magic. Essentially, it was like a Hogwarts school of witchcraft and wizardry for wealthy Victorians. Crowley depicted ceremonial magic as an extroverted method of transforming consciousness, in which the magician's consciousness is ritually exalted by words, symbols, instruments, and gestures until normal consciousness is transcended. And Crowley also postulated an intrinsic and essential connection between sex, drugs, and religion. For him, the bliss of sex and the intoxicating effects of drugs are analogous to the blissful intoxications of consciousness that accompany religious experiences. And Crowley combined his own meditative and magical practices with a wide variety of drugs, including hashish, cocaine, heroin, morphine, ether, chloroform, and peyote. However, Crowley's practice of ritualistically combining sex and drugs for religious purposes basically earned him a sinister reputation as a black magician. Although he died in relative obscurity at the age of 72 in 1947, Crowley became something of an icon during the 1960s. His philosophy of love and freedom, his progressive views about sexuality and drug use, his interest in exotic spiritual practices were all very much in tune with the atmosphere of the psychedelic 60s. The Beatles, for example, included Crowley's face on the famous cover of their Sgt. Pepper's album. And Dr. Timothy Leary sometimes said that he saw his own work as a continuation of Crowley's.
I don't see how sincerity could be involved in such a silly so-called religion.
He have completely sold himself to the devil. He have no part of God. Everything he do over there is no part of God. Nothing God had anything to do with. It's something he created in his own mind.
I think they're nuts. No, they come in, you know, they're nice doctors and lawyers and very prominent people. And then they come in and they turn into completely different people.
Anton Xander LaVey was born Howard Stanton LaVey, April 11th in 1930, and died October 29th in 1997. He was an American author, musician, and occultist. He was the founder of the Church of Satan and the religion of LaVeyan Satanism. He authored several books, including the Satanic Bible, the Satanic Rituals, the Satanic Witch, the Devil's Notebook, and Satan Speaks. In addition, he released 3 albums, including The Satanic Mass, Satan Takes a Holiday, and Strange Music. He played a minor on-screen role and served as technical advisor for the 1975 film The Devil's Reign, and served as host and narrator for Nick Bogas' 1989 Mondo film Death Scenes. LaVey was the subject of numerous articles and news media throughout the world, including popular magazines such as Look, McCall's, Newsweek, and Time, and men's magazines. He also appeared on talk shows such as The Joe Pine Show, Donahue, and The Tonight Show, and in 2 feature-length documentaries, Satanis in 1969 and Speak of the Devil, The Canon of Anton LaVey in 1993. 2 official biographies had been written on LaVey, including The Devil's Avenger by Burton H. Wolfe, published in 1974, and The Secret Life of a Satanist by Blanche Barton, published in 1990.
And they think of it as an evil kind of philosophy until I begin to discuss the philosophy of Satanism with them from the standpoint of view of being opposed to hypocrisy.
Well, it occurred to me for many, many years that there was a large gray area between psychiatry and religion that was untapped, and no religion had ever been based on man's carnal needs or his fleshly pursuits. All religions are based on abstinence rather than indulgence, and all religions therefore have to be based on fear. Well, we don't feel that fear is necessary to base a religion on. The fact that religions for thousands of years have been telling people what they should do and what they shouldn't do according to the basic whims of a person who might be running the show is very understandable. We're realists, we Satanists, but we also feel that a person has to be good to themselves before they can be good to other people. So we feel the greatest sin of all is self-deceit. This is a very selfish religion. We believe in greed, we believe in selfishness, we believe in all of the lustful thoughts that motivate man, because this is man's natural feeling. This is based on what man naturally would do.
He's been in the neighborhood about 14 years, and I always knew him as Tony, and just a nice, or a little more dramatic than most men in the neighborhood, perhaps, but I certainly don't. I think he's very learned on the subject. He's done a lot of reading on magic and all of that.
Actually, I don't know what kind of man he is, because his appearance is very nice. He makes very good impression. He has very soft voice, and he talks so smooth, so, you know, so pleasant. And as soon as you meet him, you think he is a very, very nice man, you know. But because something going wrong, definitely, over there, I just had a feeling I can't trust him.
A very undesirable type of a neighbor. The property is not kept up, especially in the back. The overgrown backyard, weeds, the drain pipes from the roofs are all shot. And the minute the winter hits in, the wind, the slightest heavy wind blows most of his roof on my backyard. I am out there picking up shingles and pieces of tar paper.
Before he used to have all his hair, just like curly head of hair. Now he shaved his head and wears the collar. And and being a Satanist minister, this too is something sort of sets him apart. And I think rather original for him to have conceived this idea. Oh, according to this publicity man that I met, this publicity man and Mr. LeVay came upon the idea that with his owning a lion, the Satanist church would be a wonderful offshoot, and since he did evidently believe in the devil, they hit upon the idea of the Satanist church.
It's an attempt. It's an attempt at imitating Orthodox religion, and as an attempt to establish one by forms and ritual. He attempts to establish an actual religion. He has officiated, at least in the newspapers, and there's pictures of it, officiated at one death. And he has officiated at marriages and christenings.
We feel guilt is a necessary thing, not necessary that it's practiced at all times, but we're stuck with it. We have it in our collective unconscious. We have a certain amount of feeling of apprehension for things we've done because we're taught from childhood not to do certain things. Any attempt to sort of scrape the psyche clean is only going to make us much more, and certainly much more fraught with frustrations and tensions. So what we've done is just reverse the procedure. Instead of trying to free ourselves, we've taken all these hang-ups, we've turned them into useful situations. If you're going to be a sinner, be the best sinner on the block. If you're going to do something that's naughty, do it. And realize that you're doing something naughty and enjoy it.
Being such strong believers as we are in the Mormon religion, of course there was great conflict. It seems as if a belief in flesh, I mean, in doing per se what you want to do while you're here upon this earth, not worrying about a life to come and the fact that God has commanded us to do certain things.
There are women, they are without clothes, naked. And men are in kind of black, I don't know even the name of those clothes, you know. Just a kind of high hat on a top. And they're all covered in black. And what I can see from my window sometimes, it's a red light. And in this red light, those silhouettes, you know, like devils, I would say. And one silhouette, a big one, on the left side, I don't know, maybe it's him standing over the whole crowd and preaching, probably.
Most people who don't know anything about it or him, I mean, I've met people who say, oh, you live next door to the man who believes in the devil, you know, and they get all excited and think there's, you know, some horrible goings on.
Definitely, I think that Christian churches, they should be maybe active somehow. They should do something about it.
Well, of course, this is not the first time that this sort of thing has been apparent in the history of the Christian Church. From the very beginning, in the fourth gospel, this conflict of good and evil is brought forth very pointedly by a contrast between light and darkness. And the quotation from St. John's Gospel is, "For men love darkness rather than light, because their deeds are evil." I would not want to dignify this work out here by calling it a church. It certainly doesn't have the ethical content that I think the Christian church has. And we certainly should keep our ethics high. And I think that this sort of thing that goes on here is anything but that.
Myself, I have naturally many of the same problems, the trials and tribulations of any regular minister, of any other church. The only thing that really presents a difference is the fact that I cannot perhaps be sanctimonious about things, but I can do anything that I want to. I can pursue any kind of lustful desires that I might feel. I can engage in any activities that are so-called sinful activities and not really worry about any ecumenical councils making it right for me to do these things.
Okay, now for me to stand up and say, this is wrong, you shouldn't be there, everything you're doing is morally wrong and legally wrong, then I'm denying him his right. I'm denying him his right to say that he believes in the Satanic Church, that he stands up for what he believes in. You know, and this is his own prerogative. I mean, if he wants to do it, let him do it. And I think more power to him that he has the courage to stand up to quite a few bigoted people.
So how worried should we be? What do you think? When will our evil overlords appear? I'm Linnea Quigley for Paranormal Truth.